Okay, good morning everybody, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. Erev Shabbat Kodesh. Great to see everyone on this beautiful Friday morning. Those that are listening live, those that are listening to the recording, Hashem should bless all of us on this beautiful Erev Shabbat with the blessing of allowing us to ever climb on the mountain of Hashem, to come closer to the mountain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And just like Rabbi Bachya says over here in this week's parasha, beautifully, that when the women light the candles, they should pray. There's a beautiful prayer for the women to say when they're lighting the Shabbat candles, that they should pray for children that are Talmidei Chachamim, children that are in the way of the Torah, with the values, especially in a confusing and difficult and scary world today, with so many new ideologies and new ways of life that are so foreign to not only Jews, but mankind as a whole, things that never existed 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So Hashem should bless us and help us and our children remain committed to the values that we received on Har Sinai over 3,000 years ago. Amen. Okay, everybody. Parashat Yitro, of course, we know God gives us the Torah, and our rabbis tell us that before He gave it to us, He actually offered it to the Goyim. Our rabbis tell us that He went to Esav, He offered them the Torah. Would you like it? Esav asked, what does it say? Always, you have to know before you sign, what are you signing on? What are you signing to? What are you committing yourself to? Okay, except for marriage. You shouldn't find out, because else you'll never get married. But everything else, you should know what you're getting yourself into. Okay? And Esav said, what does it say? God said, it says in the Torah that you're not allowed to kill. Esav said, I'm sorry, I can't accept that. I live by the sword. Well, we saw yesterday how the Mizbeach can't have a sword on it, because it's Esav's trade. Esav kills and the Mizbeach gives life. It doesn't make sense to bring a sword on a Mizbeach. It's two contradictory ideas and themes. Okay, he went to Yishmael. Would you like the Torah? What does it say? You can't steal. Yishmael says, I can't steal. Well, yeah, how am I going to make a living? That's what I do, who I am. Moav, you can't commit adultery. Adultery, what do you mean? How do you think I got here? I'm a product of adultery. And therefore, one by one, each nation didn't want to accept the Torah until God came to the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they said, how much is it? No, I'm just kidding. They didn't ask that. Okay, the Jewish people, they, you know the joke, right? They asked how much. God said it's free. They said, okay, we'll take 2. Okay, so God comes along and gives us the Torah, and we said beautifully, Na'aseh v'nishma. We said, we're in. We want it, and we'll listen, whatever you want. A big question, by the way. What does it mean, Na'aseh v'nishma? Maybe we'll get to that next week, because it's actually written in next week's parasha, although they said it here in the receiving of the Torah. But it's written next week, so maybe we'll go next week into the idea of Na'aseh v'nishma and Parashat Mishpatim. But the Jewish people said, we're in, we want it. Beautiful. So they come to the mountain. The pasuk says, Vayityatzvu betahti tahar. They stood on the foot of the mountain, and God told Moshe, make sure they don't climb to the mountain. And it's very interesting how God warns us a few times not to climb. He tells Moshe, make sure no one comes up, not man, not animal. Moshe said, okay. He went down, he says, guys, nobody come up. He made a fence. Then he comes back up and he said, God says, by the way, go down again, tell them not to come up. Moshe's like, I already told them. They're good, they know, I told them. God says, tell them again. And the question is raised by many commentaries on that idea. Why does Hashem tell Moshe to tell us 2 times? Why is not one not enough? And there are beautiful ideas. Just one quick thought from Rav, from the Brisker Rav Soloveitchik, Rav JB Soloveitchik from YU, Alav Shalom. He says that there's 2 types of fences in life. There's a fence that you can see. This wall behind me is a fence. You have a property, maybe you put up a fence. Maybe you have a security guard in your office. These are fences that are there physically protecting, making sure no one comes in that's not supposed to. You put a fence around maybe your house. Make sure that no perpetrators, no robberies. So that's a fence. There's a physical fence. There's something that you could see with your eyes. There's a physical boundary. But there's another type of fence. There's a fence that's not a fence that you could actually touch. It's a fence that's a moral fence. There's nothing concrete. It's more of a value. If I am tempted to steal something, sometimes there's a fence preventing me from stealing. As an example, maybe there's a vending machine that I can't steal from. I have to put money. Or maybe there's a security guard in the store watching that nobody steals. But sometimes there's no one there. Sometimes the fence is the idea that I believe that it's wrong to steal. That's also a fence. But it's a very different type of fence. It's not a fence of stone. It's not a fence that's made out of something that's physical that I could touch. It's a fence that's made out of my love, my respect for this thing. The fact that I value my marriage is enough of a reason for me. That's a fence. Now, maybe sometimes I'm able to be tempted to do something that's not so correct. But that I can't because there's a fence. What fence? There's no real fence. No one's blocking you. The Midrash, listen to this Midrash, my friends, in Shir HaShirim. The Pasuk says, I want to just open it to read it to you. There's a beautiful Midrash. The Pasuk says in Shir HaShirim, Shorech agan hasahar al yihsar hamazeg. Okay, again, hard to understand this because it's very cryptic. Shir HaShirim is very deep. But let's go to the second half. Bitnech aremat hitim suga bashoshanim. Your belly, your stomach, is like a stack of wheat fenced in with roses. Suga, a siyag, bashoshanim. Anyone understand what that means? To have a fence of roses? What kind of fence is that? If I told you I have a fence protecting my safe, I have very important things, I put a big fence. You ask me what kind of fence? Metal, iron, barbed wires. I say, no, a fence of roses. Says the Midrash, what does that mean, a fence of roses? Says the Midrash, Elu divrei Torah. It means the commandments in the Torah are the fence of roses. As an example, think about how many mitzvot we have. Rabbi Levi says, Adam nosei isha. I'll give you an example. A man marries a lady, whether he's 30 or 40, ben shloshim, ben mem. Motzi yetziotav. Now he's ready to spend money on the wedding. He could afford to pay for it. He comes to after the wedding and he's ready to consummate the marriage. You spend a lot of money, you march down the aisle, he finally gets into the yichud room, to the moment of truth where he's ready to consummate the marriage. She says, I saw something like red, meaning she had the cycle, the time of the month, her menstrual blood. I see something blood as red as a rose, and now she becomes nida. What does the man do? Poresh mimena. He immediately physically separates from her, because that's the halacha. Mi garam lo. Who's forcing him to shelo yikrav la, not to get close to her? Is it kotel barzel? Where is there an iron wall that's not allowing him to go to her? Is it nahash? Which snake is going to bite him if he does anything? Is it akrav? Which scorpion that he shouldn't approach her? There's no scorpion, there's no snake, there's no wall of iron. You know what there is? Divrei Torah. It's the Torah. It's the Torah's commandment, which is as soft as a rose. Torah writes that a man cannot be with a lady when she is unclean with her time of the month. The Torah itself says, and that's enough for this guy to not do it. Another example, they give a person a dish of meat. Amru lo helev. They say, by the way, a piece of fat that's forbidden fell. We can't tell which piece it is. One of these pieces is not allowed. Mashach yado, he pulls back. Migaram lohu. What's stopping him from eating? When we go away on vacation, we go away on business. There are many times that we're able to eat something not kosher. We know as Jews we're not allowed to eat not kosher. But there's many times that you can technically eat. No one's going to stop you. You could go into any restaurant, take off your kippah. No one will know you're Jewish. No one's going to care. And you order like everybody else. Why don't you do it? What's stopping you? What? Is God going to come and send a snake to bite you if you do? There's no snake waiting outside of the not kosher restaurant. There's no security guard. There's no mafia member who's going to kill you. You Jew, boom! No one does that. A Jew can violate the Torah and nothing will happen. That's, by the way, part of free will. Part of free will is that we live in a world that we're able to act freely. If the moment I ate something not kosher, I got sores in my mouth, then that would be a very easy test to pass. no one would ever eat not kosher because I don't want to have sores my whole life. But that's not the way Judaism works. God gives us free will and He's patient. We're able to sin. What's stopping a man from being with his wife or from cheating on his wife? What's stopping somebody from eating not kosher? You know what it is? There's no metal physical fence. There's a spiritual fence. It's a much richer fence. It's a fence of commandment. It's a fence of a rose. It's a fence of love. Or you know what a rose is? You give a rose, right, to someone that you love. A rose is beauty. When I love my wife, when I love God, when I love my religion, so there's a rose over here that I don't want to step on. I don't want to breach this fence. Our children, many times, we raise them in a way that we forget to show them that Judaism is a rose. Instead, we teach them that it's a metal fence. We show them that you cannot pass this fence, and if you do, there's going to be consequences, there's going to be punishments, and we give them a fence of iron. That's the first type of fence. And that's a good fence, but there's many times that fence does not suffice. Again, at the end of the day, there's many opportunities in life that I could steal that there won't be an iron fence standing there. It'll just be my fence of roses, my fence of love that I have for my values. I know that this is the right thing to do, and I don't want to violate that because I appreciate the commandment not to steal, what it means to be an honest person. I appreciate my wife. There's no security cameras here watching what I'm going to do in this hotel room in a distant location. But I don't want to do anything because I know that there's a fence over here. What fence? What fence? Who's going to catch me? It's not a fence of the first type. There's a second type of fence. It's my conscience. It's the Torah. It's the commandment. It's my love. It's the rose that I have, the relationship that I have with my wife. When we teach our kids only the first type of fence, they're going to grow up in a world that very quickly they're going to realize that there's very easy ways to avoid these fences. You could get around them. You could find loopholes. You could finesse. You could sketch the system, and you could get through. Maybe there's sometimes no fence at all. When we teach them that there's a fence of something beautiful, that there's a Torah over here. When we show them not the angry God, not the sad part of the bitter. Unfortunately, it's very sad that this is what many people only teach their children. That God is angry, and God is vengeance, and God is powerful, and God is mighty, and God is jealous, and God, if you go do one wrong thing, that's sometimes how people grow up as kids. Of course, no wonder they end up hating Judaism, because it's stuck, frozen. My whole life, I'm shaking, I'm nervous. If I make one wrong move, I'm going to get lightning thrown down on me. But of course, there's a suga b'shoshanim. There's other approach, and that is to show our children how beautiful the Torah is, how it gives us a life of happiness, of meaning, of success, how I'm only hurting myself when I violate the commandments. This fence, wherever I am in the world, I'll never want to step on it. I'll never want to ruin the rose. It's not something hard. I can walk right through it, but I'm going to destroy this garden that I have. This is the second type of fence. That's why Hashem warns the Jewish people 2 times not to climb the mountain. The first is a fence. Moshe, make a fence, a physical fence. By the way, that's why the first time it says no man or animal should climb, because animals could also be prevented by a physical fence. But the second time he tells Moshe there's a more powerful fence that you need to make and give them a fence of love. This fence only man understands. That's why the second time there's no animal in the pasuk. It says tell the Jews not to go. This is something that only a human being could possibly understand and appreciate. A fence of love. Okay, so this is a beautiful idea on this pasuk. Anyways, coming back to the giving of the Torah, pasuk says that the Jewish people finally stood at the foot of the mountain. Vayityatzevū betahtit hahar. And again, loosely translated, it means that they were on the foot of the mountain, on the bottom of the mountain. Right? If you're on the bottom of the mountain, you got to climb to the top of the mountain. You're on the bottom. Comes along the Midrash and says, but 1 second, that's not what it says. It doesn't say at the foot. It says tahtit. Tahtit, tahat. What does tahat mean? Under. They stood under the mountain. Comes along the Midrash and says, because the Jews were under the mountain. Kafa alehem har kegigit. God raised the mountain over our heads like a barrel of wine. The Jewish people at Har Sinai, God took the mountain, raised it over their heads, and said, do you want it? And if not, Sham tehe kevuratchem. Here will be your burial, rest in peace. Of course, the Jewish people said, yes, we want it, of course. The Gemara, though, has a hard time with this. Gemara, there's many questions on this, right? The simplest question really is, why did God have to force us to accept it? We willingly said, Na'aseh v'nishma. It was very unnecessary for God to force our hand in marriage when we said, I do. Imagine a guy going out with a girl. She's been dreaming about him from high school. She's drooling over him. From the moment she set her eyes on him, she can't stop thinking about him. Finally, after 4 years of praying and praying and praying, he asked her out. She couldn't believe it. She said, of course, yes. They went out. He loved her. She loved him. They get engaged. Will you marry me? He puts all the petals and wherever he proposes, and it's all thought out, and the sign and everything, right? And they're on a bal bayou, and beautiful. Finally, the day of the wedding, she marches down the aisle. She gets there to the chuppah. Then he sees her. He goes to pick her up halfway. He kisses the father. He kisses the mother. Thank you for giving me your daughter. They bless him. They bless their daughter. The parents walk, and then he starts walking down. Imagine as he starts walking down, he turns to his wife, who's about to get married officially to him. And he says, by the way, I'm just warning you, honey. I have a gun in my pocket. And if you say no, I'm going to blow your brains out. Can you imagine? Guys, Majnun. He's out of his mind, right? For many reasons. But really, you didn't need to do that. She's here. She's happy to be here. She wants to be here. She said yes. She's marching down to be with you. You didn't have to twist her hand. That's the question over here. God already asked us. We said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We said we want it. But all of a sudden God says, no, I'm going to make you take it. He raises the mountain. Kafa lehem har kegigit. You want it or no? No? Boom, I'm going to kill you. Be careful. I have a gun. I have a gun here. If you say no, blow your brains out. What is this whole idea of here, my friends, of Hashem forcing us when we already willingly said, I do? Very, very deep, important question. There is an answer given, many answers. I'd like to share with you today an answer given by Rabbi Norman Lamb. He quotes over here, the student of the Baal Shem Tov, the Toldot Yaakov Yosef. He says over here something very deep, that life is filled with moments of inspiration. There's many times that we're inspired. Think about a time that you were inspired to do something good, to do something that was valuable, to do prayer or learn or maybe chesed. There's many times that we want to make shalom. Sometimes that we realize that life is too short. We shouldn't be in a fight. There are many times that I realize that it's worth and important to be in a relationship with a beautiful relationship with my wife, with my kids, with whoever it is. Sometimes in life we're feeling the energy. We're feeling the connection, the inspiration. But there are many times that we're not. I would maybe say that life has more times that we're not than we are. More often than not, we're uninspired. More often than not, we're not in the mood to pray. Today it's not so easy to find inspiration. Right? We're so interested in going and doing and accomplishing and, move. And if we wait for inspiration, then probably it could take a long time till we end up getting inspired. Right? A person may say, you know what? God, it's true, I accepted the Torah, but I accepted it because I wanted it. I said yes, I do, because I was feeling excited. I was in the mood. I felt the love. I felt the connection. I felt the harmony. I felt the joy. I saw the benefits, the value. But now, God, it's hard to be Jewish. 2023. Today, this month, it's tax season. I have to start cutting some corners. It's time for me to be a little bit. Summer's coming. Got to start doing things that are maybe against my values. Now, I'm not so in the mood, God. A person may say that. I accepted the Torah because I wanted. I loved you. I was in love. But many times we're not in love. says of Yaakov Yosef, to teach us this. You know why God raised the mountain? To teach us that even if a person doesn't have a desire to learn or to serve the Lord, nevertheless he is not free to desist from them. He should imagine as if someone is forcing him to do it, just like Hashem forced us at Sinai. It's true, you love your wife, and it's true your wife loves you, and it's true she's happy to say yes. But the day will come, maybe in a month or in a year, day will come where you're not going to feel so in love. You're not going to all of a sudden look at your wife or your husband with the same, twinkle in your eye that you did when you were under the chuppah. Now it's filled with resentment, with hate, maybe with bitterness, contempt. Can't believe what happened. How did this person I thought I loved, they're a monster. Sometimes it could happen. And it's at that moment that a person has to realize Kafa alehem har kegigit, that in life my mood shouldn't determine my values. If I value something, I remember I love my wife. She's for me. Today, the reason there's so many divorces is because people base their marriage on their mood. Yesterday I was feeling it, today I'm not. So, I'll see you later. But God raises the mountain over our heads to remind us that even when a person is not inspired, in Hebrew he calls it days of smallness. You see, there are days, my friends, of largeness. There are days where we feel big, strong, excited, filled with energy, ready to do, ready to serve, ready to love, ready to live. There are days that we want to get up and accomplish and achieve. We want to learn 5 daf a day. And we want to pray 20 times and finish Tehillims and wear and do. And then there are days, months and years. There are years of smallness. Years of the opposite. Think back to a time when you were maybe in yeshiva or seminary or in school, when you felt large, big, excited. You were ready to conquer, to do. You wanted to be Hashem's soldier. And then there are moments in life where we're so uninspired, where our hearts shrink and our souls feel so puny. We're occupied with nonsense. We're lost in this world. We're focused on the wrong things. We're not growth-oriented. There are many, many such days, maybe months, maybe years. And the Torah reminds us, Kafa lehem har kegigit. The reason I observe, the reason I do, is not because I want to, but it's because I realize that this is something that I have to do. And when a mother wakes up one day and she's not in the mood to feed her child, you would say that's a very silly mother. You don't feed your child because you feel like it. You have to. You feed her because you feel like you have to. A person who only gives love to their spouse, who only remains in a marriage when there's feelings and emotions, is making a very, very big mistake. Life requires commitment. Commitment is something that kicks in when I'm uninspired, when I'm feeling so dry, so unenthusiastic. Avraham Avinu represents a midah called chesed. Chesed is doing, giving. When you were with Avraham, you felt on top of the world. Were you ever with someone that when you were with them, you felt like they have it, they're just the right person, I want to be like them? You ever met someone like that? When you were around them, you knew they had an energy for life, an excitement. They were on the mark, and whatever they want you to do, I'm ready to do because I know that this person has clarity. That was Avraham. When you went with Avraham, you wanted to live like him. You saw him say B'chat HaMazon. Who you benching to? God, I want to believe in your God. Avraham, whatever you believe, I believe. Avraham Avinu was the Kiruv master. Avraham was chesed. Who doesn't love chesed? Huh? Everyone loves chesed. Even Jews that are not connected love chesed. Everyone loves chesed. Again, they at least say they do. Whether or not they do it, something else. But at least everyone says, I agree to chesed. Not everyone agrees to maybe other mitzvot. But chesed is, we're in, right? We're in. But what happens when Avraham dies? What happens when I'm uninspired? when the motivation, when the inspiration fades? What happens when Avraham Avinu is gone? So this is where the trait of Yitzchak Avinu kicks in. Yitzchak, we know, was known for his gevurah. Yitzchak is what we call discipline. Yitzchak is what's able to contain the wells of Avraham, the midah of Avraham. Matter of fact, we don't know much about Yitzchak. If I offered you to go back and meet one of the avot, most people, Yitzchak would be the last of the three. Because he's the least that we know anything about. We don't see much of him. He was put on the altar by his dad when he was a kid, and he was fooled by his kids when he was a man. Right? He was just nothing much to talk about Yitzchak. What do we know? We know one story about him. That he redug wells that his father dug. His father dug wells, and when his father died, they were covered, and then he came back and undug them. He redug them. But that is, I think, encapsulating who Yitzchak was. Yitzchak was able to redig a well that was covered up when Avraham died. Avraham, in his lifetime, when we're inspired, we make promises. We make resolutions, vows. We promise we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to commit. When Avraham's around, we're digging. We're digging deep, deep wells of water, of kindness, of Torah, of prayer. We're building relationships, we're building a business. When Avraham's here, we're digging deep. But then Avraham dies, and those wells get covered up. And it's Yitzchak that comes to the rescue. Yitzchak, it's discipline. It's realizing, kafa alehem har kegigit. It's this emotionless routine, but I do it anyways. That's Yitzchak. Such a powerful trait, my friends. What a trait to be able to stay committed. Like we say in English, to grind. To grind. To go and do something that I don't want to do. But to go to work, even though I don't want to. To be with my spouse, even though I'm not in the mood. To stay committed to my values, to my religion, even when it's starting to fade away. These are called the Yemei Katnut. These are called the Yemei Katnut. And he says this, my friends, listen to this. There's no greater pleasure than when serving God in the days of largeness, in the days of Gadlut. When you're feeling it, that's the best feeling. Yeah? You ever went, like, Yom Kippur? When you're down to just fast and pray and you're going to cry. Oh boy, am I going to cry. I'm going to fill up a whole cup with my tears, right? That's the best feeling. When you're ready to pray and you're feeling it, it's the best. When you're ready to keep Shabbat, the best feeling in the world. But he says, there's no greater enjoyment and pleasure than serving in the days of Gadlut, in the days of bigness. But there's no greater reward than when serving in the days of Katnut, than when serving when I'm small. The reward comes when we're small, when we don't want to. A man once came to the disciple, he says, Rabbi, I don't have a heshek to learn. I'm not in the mood to learn. You know what the rabbi said back? So learn without a heshek. So learn without a mood. There's something so deep and powerful in that story. Learn without a mood. Today it's all about, how do I feel? What is my mood? What do I feel? What gender do I feel like? What do I feel like I want to do? Right? That's all about how do I feel? That's what today's catchphrase is. How do I feel? And if I don't feel, not doing. But that's not Judaism. Kafa alehem har kegigit. God raised the mountain over our heads. God says, you're not doing it because you feel like it. In life, we have to learn to do it because we need to do it. We must. There's something called a responsibility. God says, I'm not giving you 10 rights. I'm giving you 10 commandments. No one asked you. No, a slave doesn't ask, do I want to? No one asks him. Do it. You're forced. That's why Hashem only gave the Torah to a nation of slaves. Because a slave knows you can't ask always why. A slave, when Paro says, build pyramids, the slave didn't walk in and say, I don't know about that, I'm not in the mood. Paro, I'm a little tired today, I'm going to sit this one out. No one says that. You're a slave, no one cares. You do. This is the mentality that's needed when it comes to really succeeding in life, in a business, in a relationship, You got to do it. First, we got to do. This is really what it means, na'aseh v'nishma. Whether or not I can hear it, whether I want to hear it, whether I understand it, whether I don't understand it. First, you got to do it. There's a beautiful story told about a little town. Little town, it's a quiet village. Okay, fine. Little town, right? Little town. And in this town, everyone, because it was a small town, a hamlet, no one really knew the right time. No one really knew what was the right time of the day. They had watches, but they never had the real time that they have back in the real metropolis. Their times were all wrong, inconsistent with each other. One had at 7 o'clock, one had 6:30, one had at 7:30. Okay. So what did they do? They put their clocks in the drawer, and they would wait for someone to come from the big city to let them know what the real time is. Except for one guy. One guy also put his watch in the drawer, but he would keep every day winding his watch to the wrong time, but at least he was winding it, making sure it was working. One day, finally a gentleman comes from the metropolis, and they all go over to him. They say, how's it going? How's the big city? How's the kingdom? What's the latest news? And what's the time? Of course, the man pulls out his watch, and he says, well, the exact time, according to the big government, is 9:37. 9:37. Everyone runs to their drawers to get their watch to start winding them to the right time. Unfortunately, they realized that their watches no longer worked. They sat in the drawers and they collected dust, and they became so rusty that they no longer were able to work. All except for this one man. The one man who was able to wind his clock, although to the wrong time. But now that he had the right time, he was able to wind it to the correct time. You see, in life, there are some people that say, I'm only going to wind the clock when I have the right clock, when I have the right time. When I have the right time, when I'm feeling prayer, when I'm in the mood of learning, when I'm in the mood of doing, then I'm going to go. But you know what? A person could have his watch sitting, his heart could be numb for years. You could stay for months and months and months. And you know what happens? One day you do get inspired and you try to open up that watch, but you find it no longer works. We find that our hearts remain so idle, so numb for so many months and years that we no longer know how to pray. We no longer know how to love. We no longer know how to live, how to do. The wise man knows, wind the clock to the wrong time. You're not feeling it, but do it anyways. Do it anyways. And this is one day, the day will come where you'll get the right time, you'll get inspired, and you'll see that you'll be able to connect all of those moments and bring them into this one. Beautiful idea said by the Meshech Chochmah. He says, he says that these words that I'm commanding you, the Shema says, they should be on your heart. What does it mean on your heart? You should do it with your heart. What does it mean on? You do mitzvot on your heart or with your heart? You do it with your heart, with all your heart. Love God with all your heart. What's al? It should say belevavecha. Right? It's a good question. Says the Meshech Chochmah, there are many times, my friends, that we can't serve God with the heart because the heart's closed. The heart is closed. We don't have the right time. The heart is closed. So what do? Wind the clock anyways. Do it anyways. Do the mitzvah on the heart. Not in the heart. Do it on. But you know what's going to happen? You do a mitzvah on and on and on and on and on. And finally, one day, the day will come where somebody will come with the right time. Somebody will come and inspire us. And Avraham Avinu will be revived. There will be some person that could come and open up the stone-cold heart that we have. They're going to open it up. They're going to be able to inspire us. When that heart opens, you know what's going to happen? All of those prayers, all of those feelings, all of those activities, all of the chesed, all of the things that we did will come trickling right down into the heart. And we will be able to have a heart filled with good deeds and beautiful emotions. What a powerful idea. God raises the mountain. You know why? No one asked you. Don't think for a second that you are accepting this Torah because you feel like it. No one cares about your feelings. It's not about our feelings. we have what's called a responsibility. Do it for the rest of time. God says, imagine a mountain suspended. I'm not in the mood. Will you marry me or not? Yes. Person that feels, who's able to get to that level of putting aside their mood, their feelings, for their values, and again, there's always exception in a marriage where this person is someone that I should stay very far and I need to get divorced from them. But again, that's an exception. That's not the rule. And rule in a marriage, in a relationship, things that we do, and also in a business, by the way. Sometimes in a business, a person may realize that, you know what, this is not really what I was cut out to do. Maybe this business is not for me. Maybe I'm in the wrong vocation. That could also be. A person needs to once in a while reassess. But to remember our commitments, our vows. And even when I don't have my heart open, even if I have the wrong time, so to speak, but to stay true to my values, to my religion, to stay true to what I do, to what I believe, and then that day will come. We say, I'll end with a prayer. We say at the end of the Amidah, Yula ratzonim reifi, ve'geyon b'lefanecha. May the words of my heart be wanting in front of you. May you want them. And the thoughts of my heart. God is my rock, Hashem tzuri ve'goali, and my Redeemer. But he brings over here a beautiful explanation. Yihiu l'ratzon imrei fi. Even God, if my heart is closed, and only my lips are moving. Even if only it's my peh, even if only my mouth is praying. Sometimes we're praying with our mouths and our heart, our mind is racing somewhere else. But God, Hegeyon b'lefanecha, may you accept my efforts, so that one day in my days of greatness, Vehegeyon b'lefanecha, my heart is in it. When my heart does one day get excited and gets back into it, my prayers will rise up to you. Hashem tzuri, God is my rock supporting me in my weak moments, Vego Ali, and during my great moments. Hashem should bless us always to keep committed, to help us stay strong, pushing. Always envision this mountain suspended in midair over our heads. This way we'll be able to climb and get closer ever more to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to our spouse, to our friends, to the people around us that we love so very much. Okay, we'll stop over here, everybody. Wishing everyone an amazing Shabbat ahead. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see everyone next week. Bye-bye.